case study, Claire, the student teacher. Diversity. When looking at how Claire could have dealt with the issue of diversity better, it would help if she had prior knowledge of the GTC&A competencies regarding diversity. Policies that would have been relevant to Claire would have been 8, 19 and 21. These competencies could have been of use to Claire as they would have provided her with a clear understanding of diversity. Competence 8 would have ensured that Claire could have a prior knowledge of who was in her class, and therefore she could have been more prepared for any questions relating to diversity. This competence would also inform Claire to think about the wider school context and how everyone is to be respected. 19 and 21 could also have been helpful to Claire, as they would inform her in order for her pupil to feel respected in class, the teacher must provide a safe learning environment that is inclusive of all. From the literature, Claire could have learned from reading Pollard, as he said, in such circumstances, teachers should shut down the conversation and respond assertively instead of aggressively. Every School a Good School highlights that schools have a duty of care to form links between communities and to encourage interaction. Strategies that Claire could have employed in class could have been to educate the children on how everyone is different and everyone should be respected. She could also make the class more culturally inclusive by putting up posters and having different languages around the walls, such as give respect, get respect, and everyone is equal. Claire could also create a class charter and have in place a set of rules that everyone in class agrees with. This can make all pupils aware that behaviour such as name calling and exclusion are not tolerated in her classroom. Claire could use different language like we, us in our class to make everyone feel welcome.
In terms of behavioural management, it was found that the competencies that linked to Claire in terms of behavioural management were the following: 6, 7, 10 and 22. The students can pick up on the lack of discipline from Claire and act on the behavioural issues, as Claire hasn't fully read the policies on behavioural management. Therefore, she hasn't been able to find the warning sheets on how the school responds to such issues. Firm class rules and boundaries need to be specified. Claire should also read the school policies only when the whole class is learning. The teaching is regarded as being successful. Claire could also ask the teacher whose class she is teaching to observe the lesson and report back any feedback and act on that feedback. In terms of the incident with Joe, the sentence, "It is not okay to hit someone in school at any time," this will ensure that people understand the rules that have been broken in the behavioural management. The layout of the room could also avoid some disturbances. Claire could set down her own rules when she first met the students and draw up a contract they had to adhere to. This would give them an idea as to the acceptable behaviour and the repercussions of not adhering to these rules. The strategies from Pollard are 5 progressive stages in regarding to behavioural management. If minor, indicate with eye contact and a shake of the head to disapprove the behaviour. If repeated, make sustained eye contact and use more emphatic non-verbal gestures. If persistent, stop the actions and distance the child from the situation. If punishment is judged to be necessary, ensure that punishments are consistent with the school policies and appropriate. And closure, take those involved to one side and present them with the problem and encourage the child to identify what had done wrong. The teacher is always in the superior role, and this should be reiterated with the pupils. There are 3 types of classroom management in terms of Pollard: minimise the disturbance, maximise the reassurance, and pausing for sufficient time before making judgment.
In terms of special educational needs and inclusion, Claire should have paid attention to the following competences. Competence 9, Claire must have greater knowledge of the learning needs that are on display in her classroom, and she should understand that certain activities and ways of explaining things may trigger pupils with ASD, so she should thus approach these students in a manner that is comfortable for them. Competences 14 and 15, Claire must differentiate and scaffold learning for the SEN students in her class and understand that all students work in different ways. Just because she thinks sitting down and explaining the task to Tom will help him does not mean it will. Claire's expectations should be high but reasonable, and so she should modify her strategies to best suit her learners. Professional competence 21, Claire must take cognizance of different learning abilities and styles in her class, with specific attention being paid to Ethan, who displays signs of dyslexia. Instead of standing behind pupils and encouraging them to hurry up, Claire should think of what strategies she could be proactively employing to make learning more accessible for these pupils. So the SEN Code of Practice dictates that for a student like Aoife, Claire should recognise that she displays evidence of impaired social interaction and communication, and she should then seek to employ teaching methods that will allow Aoife to take part in learning equally with her classmates, In keeping with the code of practice, Claire does consider and grants the ascertainable wishes of the student, but Claire could perhaps take this further by asking Aoife which girls in particular she would like to work with. And in regards to Tom's reaction to Claire's methods of teaching is negative. Claire should take note of his emotional response to her teaching method and adjust her approach, providing help to reduce his anxiety and help his self-esteem. And in keeping with the subsection within the code of practice entitled Involving the Child, Claire should perhaps consider placing Tom in greater control of his own learning. For instance, working collaboratively with Tom to agree on a learning strategy that best suits him, as well as involving Tom in implementing his own individual education plan.
Looking at the reflective teaching by Calire, we can provide us with a table entitled When Children and Young People Learn Best. This offers a list of effective classroom practices that Claire could employ to ensure the holistic and equal education of her SEN learners. Looking at further strategies, Black, Hawkes and Florin 2012 outlines the benchmarks of inclusive pedagogy against traditional approaches to inclusion. This helps most or some learners. Claire could benefit from reading these comparisons to inform and fortify her current inclusive practices. Other strategies. Claire could seek to become more informed about learner contexts in her classroom by speaking to the school's SENCO or designated teacher to find out what works best for the SEN students in her class. For example, with Aoife, the SENCO could provide details of how best to integrate her into group activities so that she remains comfortable and can achieve her full potential. Claire could think of some practical solutions that she as a class teacher could help implement inclusive education and assessment for learning, or AFL. Therefore, moving forward for the remainder of Claire's placement and teaching future practice, to improve the level of her students' learning, we advise, along with everything outlined previously, that she act as a role model using inclusive language, collaborating with students to create class charters and rules, designing seating plans and using them to consciously make an effort to learn names and interests of students along with their educational needs. Returning to good practices of planning lessons, evaluating and reflecting, and therefore planning accordingly to ensure progression with her teaching, as after all, teaching is an art to be perfected. Finally, treating herself to a watch, as timekeeping is vital. Thank you for watching from SIG Group 31.